Yes. Hello, folks. Welcome to the community call for today, August 20th. And Sydney, like I said, this one will be
Is it
Got
still
it, yeah.
to see how many people are on the live side?
Yes, we've got 20 attendees right now. So
Oh, I see.
per usual, we will give it another 2 minutes or so for folks to trickle in. But yes, Sydney, that is a RFC in the PowerShell RFC repo, or a PR.
Awesome. I'll just open that now so I have it ready to go.
And these are not the notes I just had open. These are the notes I was supposed to have open. There we go. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to be dropping off a little bit early today. I live in the United States where we have jury duty, and I am being pulled into Zoom jury selection as of last night for 10 a.m. this morning. So I'm going to be hopping off halfway through. Give it one more minute for folks to trickle. But I did go ahead and pre-populate a bunch of the Q&A here that people have asked, but feel free, this is issue number 258 on the PowerShell RFC repo. You can ask more questions here. We also do accept them here in the Q&A. We'll be keeping an eye on as well, but it's typically better, morning, Joel, typically better for dozens, yes we do, to post them here in the issues so that we have them for posterity. So, Steve, do you want to hop on talking about the latest release?
Yeah. So we just shipped preview 6. When was it? Monday. Today's Thursday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm already losing track of days of the week again. I thought I got back into it, but now I lost. But yeah, so we got, I had that blog post to kind of highlight some of the more noteworthy changes that people should be aware of. I think maybe the more important thing here, rather than kind of going through that blog post, which should just read that themselves, is kind of like, and I do mention it in the blog post as well, like what's going to happen for the rest of this release. So our current plan is to have our last preview 7, around the first week of September, so not too far from now. And we needed that additional preview to kind of get some additional changes that we have in progress, because we don't want to take any significant code changes once we hit our release candidate. The bar will go up. And then from the release candidate, we expect to probably have 2 of those, one around mid to 3rd week of September, and then one sometime in October. And if everything goes well, then we expect to have general availability in November. And again, between the release candidates, the bar will go up because we really want to reduce any risk to the release. So we'll be taking some bug fixes, so continue to contribute to those. But keep in mind, like, if things don't make it into 7.1, they'll be one of the first things in 7.2. So don't feel bad about that. I guess it's probably also worth calling out that Joey has an issue open on some decisions the committee has made on experimental features. So on the release candidate, just like we did last time, experimental features will be disabled by default unless you have it enabled in your PowerShell config file. And so a few of the features that have shipped in 7.1 that are experimental will come out of experimental. So those will still be enabled, but some will stay as experimental through the remainder of 7.1, and they'll pop back up in 7.2 as we continue to evaluate when they're ready to be non-experimental.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's... Go ahead.
Now I want to touch one more thing, because I remember I didn't put this in a blog post, but I did tweet about it. So I've officially submitted 7.1 Preview 6 to the Microsoft Store. I am still waiting on them to tell me whether or not it's accepted or rejected, and I expect that we'll probably hit a rejected initially, then I'll need to get it approved. But at this point, it's completely out of my hands, and it does take several business days for that to kind of go through the certification process. So I have no ETA because it's completely out of my hands when it may or may not show up. As far as we know, as a PowerShell team, we've done everything right this time to get it published, and I guess we'll see when it finishes going through the certification process.
Yeah, so we've been working pretty closely with that team, and it is somewhat complex given the fact that we are a system-level tool that needs unvirtualized access to the machine in order to really do useful stuff. So, we don't want to publish one up there that's not sort of fully functional, and so that's you will see that show up. Hopefully, we have something exciting to tweet about soon. So. Given that I am going to be taken off in a few minutes, I wanted to go ahead and start with this one because it's something I've been thinking about very deeply, and that Ilya was asking about in the notes here, and we do have a number of other features and things that we want to get to from the team before we jump into the full Q&A. But Ilya, asked the question here, Istasnoff, could Microsoft team think how we make the work with the community members more efficient? It's very difficult to switch to long-standing PRs and plan personal time slots. The team publishes general long-term plans, but it is completely unclear who will work on what things in the near future. It'd be great to see. Next month we will accept as many file system PRs as possible, and so on. So this is something we've thought very deeply about for a very long time, and it's something that I'm actually in the final throes of writing a blog post on for a new process that we want to move to in regards to how we manage issues and pull requests inside of the PowerShell repository, in addition to the sort of pipeline of RFCs, design ideas, new feature requests, all that sort of thing, and how we manage those in a more decentralized way. So, to give you the basic gist, we're basically establishing some working groups that are going to sort of be responsible for some of the area labels that already exist in the PowerShell repo. So you'll see, we already use these pretty heavily, these area labels. And so the idea is that, really we're doing more of a sort of decentralized triage with smaller groups that are responsible for, tighter scoped areas of the PowerShell repo. And then the long-term plan is to be able to sort of onboard additional community members to their, areas of specialty, folks that have been contributing heavily, but maybe, aren't as much an expert on the engine as they are on, I'm having trouble coming up with anything off the top of my head like that, but so maybe someone's a remoting expert, right? But they're not so much a performance expert, right? So there's a lot that we can accomplish there in terms of drilling down some of this backlog of pull requests. I think we recognize that there's a lot of these in the backlog, but one of the things that I've sort of tried to push is that we really want the PowerShell repo to be very, very stable, right? This is a big thing, and it's why a lot of times we exercise a lot of caution and hesitance to merge pull requests that maybe are making some kind of breaking change, or where people are adding functionality that hasn't been fully validated somewhere else, to make sure that we're making the right decision. Because when we add things in PowerShell, it's very, very difficult for us to take them away, right? We can do this in modules, we can fork modules, but PowerShell itself is really sort of this special case where, it's hard for us to shrink the size of the package. So, anything that we can do outside of PowerShell, we really want to be doing outside of PowerShell and modules, and 0.1 releases of other stuff that we can then validate. And if there's really, really a high demand to bring that thing into PowerShell, well, then we can go say, hey, that module makes sense to bring into PowerShell. But additionally, we want to leverage experimental features more and more. You see this issue here about which experimental features are remaining in 7.1, but one of the things that we want to do is have a lot more experimental features that live in this second bucket. So we want to be able to merge pull requests where we're basically saying, hey, we actually don't know that this should ever go into PowerShell, but we want to try it out in a preview, right? We're going to find out if it breaks people. And there's a very good chance we'll end up ripping this thing out or leaving it experimental forever, or taking it out completely. But right now I think there's sort of a perception that experimental is just sort of a preview staging ground for things, and we'd like that to not be the case, so that we have more data to make decisions about whether or not to merge these sorts of things. So hopefully that answers some of the question. I'd say really just wait for that blog post, because I'm going to talk about all this and a lot more, sort of the semantics of how this is going to work on the ground level. But we do think that we have a fairly good plan here for kind of organizing all that stuff. But did anyone have anything they wanted to add? Nope. Okay, going once, going twice. All right, so the next one I had on the agenda, if this is the order that we're okay going in, is semantic highlighting in the PowerShell preview extension for VS Code. Oops. So I think I'm going to hand it over, if I still have Justin on the call. Yep, Justin, are you able to see the shareability here?
Let me see.
You should be able to share to the left side here, and then I can pop you to the right side. But Justin's going to be showing off some of the new semantic highlighting that we have that should make the syntax highlighting a lot
better. Live?
Yep, looks like I can see it on the live, so I think you're good. Yeah, go for it.
Quick introduction of yourself, Justin.
Oh yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Justin. I'm currently a writing senior going to UCSD studying computer science, and I'm currently an intern on the PowerShell team. One of my projects this summer was to add PowerShell semantic highlighting support in VS Code. And as of right now, it has been released on the PowerShell preview extension. So let's go over, I guess, like what highlighting was before. Before, it was based on text-mate grammars, which is essentially a bunch of mapping of regular expressions to tokens, which then is used by the theme.json file of each theme to sort of map scopes to different groups that can be colored differently. So for the problem with this is that regular expressions are sort of limited in their ability to recognize different syntax patterns. So for example, on the left side, we have highlighting solely based on syntax highlighting on text, the text-mate grammars. And on the right side, we have highlighting provided by semantic highlighting, new semantic highlighting protocol. So we can notice that in 5 examples, due to some sort of limitation of the syntax highlighting, the certain tokens don't get recognized. So for example, in example 2, this function name should probably be highlighted all the same color, but due to regular expressions and the limitations, it's actually split into 2 different tokens. So what we do instead in semantic highlighting is that we utilize PowerShell's tokenizer, and then we map the PowerShell tokens that can be identified into semantic tokens that can be that were predefined by VS Code and then can be recognized by the themes. So here we can notice that this token, this function, is actually recognized as 1 token, and hold on. Yeah, you can notice that there's a new section here that defines a function semantic type, which then can be recognized by the VS Code theme. Similarly, you have this case in example 4 where this count member is actually recognized as part of a string instead of a member, and you notice here that it is now recognized as a property instead. So in summary, semantic highlighting provides a more accurate sort of representation of the tokens in a PowerShell script and should be a better experience when editing PowerShell scripts, not VS Code.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is really cool. It's just getting us that much closer to, the sort of say full parity with the ISE, you know, you'll note that that right side, and I'll take back over here, Justin. If I can remember how to share here. So yeah, it's just that right side is now looking, you know, almost exactly like you would expect out of the ISE, and you know, I know some of that syntax highlighting drives me a little bit crazy when it's not showing up exactly right. It can be a little bit confusing, make you think you've left a quote or in the wrong place or something like that, when in actuality it's just the regex that's kind of messing up. So really awesome. Thanks, Justin.
Let me just add, so Justin's internship is coming to an end in a few weeks. He is working on something else that's pretty cool. We'll talk more about that later, and expect that he'll have a blog post on that later.
Thank you. Cool. So I think let's keep going here. I'm gonna move notebook mode down because I'm going to give that to Sydney when I hand off the notes here. So Jason, you want to talk about the updatable help pipeline?
Yeah, I'd love to. And Justin, by the way, that was awesome. I really love the semantic highlighting. Folks, so most of you know, if you've been here in the last few months, we've been talking about this, but we are committed to improving and delivering on an updatable help pipeline so that everybody sees the same help in their console that they see up on the web. And so to update this, we do have the content for Windows PowerShell 5.1 that is up there. And some of you may know we had a small bug in that, but that's been fixed and working. We also have the content of PowerShell 7.1 up there in advance of the soon-to-come release of that. What we're working on is that we're adding a new feature that really helps internal teams automate even faster on their updatable help pipeline. And as we complete that feature this month, we'll be onboarding the 6x and 7.0 docs for PowerShell. And this has been getting very exciting because other teams have started to hear about this. So while we are planning on bringing on the Office and Windows PowerShell repositories being onboarded to the new pipeline, it's fascinating. I just got contacted by the SharePoint team who's heard about it, who's very excited about it. This is good news. This means that word is traveling. So this will help us to get more teams on quicker so that we can achieve that goal of the updatable help pipeline and everybody getting the help for all of the modules eventually. And my ask to you is, in this process, hey, there might be something that's going wrong that we haven't noticed. As a matter of fact, I think it was Jeff Hicks from the community that pointed out to us the about underscore problem in the Windows 5.1 doc. So please, if you notice something wrong with the updatable help, a couple of things you can do is you can put a message in the MVP list, or you can go right to the docs repo itself and put an issue in the PowerShell docs. As a matter of fact, I have a link here that I can put in. And so you can file an issue on us there. You can also file an issue on us in PowerShell, but probably docs is the best place to go. And some of you know that you can also edit the docs directly, which will create a PR, and that will update through our new updatable help pipeline. So please let us know if you notice anything going wrong, and I'll update you next month with how much further we've gotten.
Thank you so much, Jason. Yeah, this is awesome. We're finally starting to get some buzz internally. I know like already the SCCM folks have been moving over to this new stuff, and you know, we've definitely got a stronger cohort community internally of documentation folks that are trying to do the right thing here in PowerShell. So fantastic. Danny, you want to talk about some of the Cloud Shell updates?
Yeah. So I think Cloud Shell's been quiet for quite a bit, but because we've had a lot of work items going on that we weren't ready to talk about. Yeah. So the first one is Cloud Shell. We now support running the containers inside a customer's virtual network. And so if you want to manage virtual machines or Kubernetes clusters that don't have a public IP, you can now do that. So that's pretty exciting. And that's, I think, been the #1 customer ask, besides maybe a longer timeout time. And so I'm sure it'll be pretty popular. That functionality is in preview right now. So we only have support for 2 regions, but we plan on rolling out to more regions soon. And that there's a full instruction on how to set that up in our documentation, just because there's a little bit of finagling and making sure you create the right resources. Also for CloudShell, our tools container is now open sourced and on GitHub. I think it was linked on either the notes or it's at github.com/azure/CloudShell. So definitely go check out that. Feel free to submit issues, PRs, anything that will update the tools image. And so if there's something that you've wanted in CloudShell for a while, but it hasn't been there, definitely make sure to submit a PR and we'll take a look. Yeah, thanks, Judd.
Thank you so much, Danny. Yeah, so this is, I think we do have a...
Yeah, we kind of got a how-to down below.
Contributing here. Yeah, this is where you're going to want to check out contributing in the README here. And, you know, this, we are taking PRs. So,
yes,
you know,
and if you Joey, if you scroll back up on the page, if you act a little bit more, yeah. So if you go into the Linux folder, there is the Docker files and everything here. So that's where you'll want to make primarily most of the updates to any of the tools.
Totally. Yeah. So this is, if you see here, this is where stuff goes and gets added. You know, this, by the way, if you're ever curious about all of the awesome stuff that you just have in CloudShell, which, you know, all you need is an Azure subscription. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to have a bunch of money pumped into it. You just need a super cheap, you know, Azure storage blob to attach to this thing, and you know, and you get a development environment for free that runs all this stuff. So
exactly. And now that the image is open source and available, you could run this image locally. You just need it's a Docker image, and we give instruction on how to do that as well in the README. So definitely check it out. And if you want a more managed environment that has all these tools pre-installed, this is a good source of truth for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Danny.
Yep.
And I think I'm actually going to go ahead and hand it off to Sydney here. So we're going to do a little bit of a shuffle so that Sydney can talk about the notebook mode and take over on notes. So I'm going to go ahead and push work in progress 2020 notes, and we're going to go ahead and push that up. So Sydney,
Awesome.
I think that should be available.
Cool. So I will go ahead by starting with demoing notebook mode, and then it looked like the other thing on the agenda for today was to discuss some of the DSC updates, and then we can move on to questions from there, I think.
It happens to the best of us. I forgot to save my file before I committed it.
Got it. And am I presenting now?
You are, yes.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Yeah, so we wanted to show you guys something we recently added to the VS Code experience for PowerShell, and that is notebook mode in Visual Studio Code. So the Visual Studio Code team released some preview APIs for providing a notebook-like experience natively inside of VS Code. So we are currently leveraging these APIs, and they are in a preview state. So the first thing I'll make sure is clear is that you are going to need to use Visual Studio Code Insiders to get this experience today. As those APIs move into a GA state, this experience will become available in the stable VS Code. But for now, since the APIs are preview, they are changing all the time. So we have this experience available only in our preview extension and behind a feature flag. So if you want to enable this experience today, you're going to want first the latest Visual Studio Code Insiders. You're going to want our July release of the PowerShell preview extension. And then you're going to want to update your settings. So we have this setting here. PowerShell notebooks show toggle button, and you're going to want that to be true. So if you want to update that from the UI, you can pop up in your settings. That's just Control, comma for Windows. If you search in here, notebook, I'm sure it'll come up. We got this PowerShell notebook show toggle button, and you're going to want to select that. So what notebook mode does is, let's see, let's open a new file, and it's going to take your PS1 PowerShell file, and it's going to be able to render it in a notebook-like experience. So that means that if I say I have some commas, this is going to be a notebook, and I have some code. This is Markdown. And it's going to be able to render this for you in a notebook-like experience, which means that if I select this button, enable notebook mode, I'm going to need to save the file first. Crazy file name, but that'll work. Oh, or not. Let's see what's going on here.
Hey, Sydney, just go ahead and reopen that file that you had open.
That I just had?
Yeah.
That's what I was just going to do, but I'm not seeing it in my recent.
In your workspace, yeah?
Let's see. Well, let's just do another. We'll just save this as a PowerShell file.
Yeah, save the file first. Yeah. This will eventually support untitled files, but there's an issue open.
Cool. Let's try it that way, and then let's add some Markdown again. Title. Cool. So now if we enable notebook mode, I'm gonna want to save it again, and it's going to render this for me in this notebook-like experience. Not totally sure what happened here. This typically should be Markdown, but what it's going to do is, you can see more similarly here, it's going to give me code I can run. It's going to give me that same editing experience that I expect from VS Code. So here I get some script analyzer rules, get the squigglies, and then I can go ahead and execute this code, and it's going to run in the integrated console. If I want to exit notebook mode, I can just disable it here, and it's going to give me back my original file. You can also do that through the control panel, Control-Shift-P, and that's going to give you the same options here. Some of the key things to understand about this experience is that the underlying backing file, the PS1, stays exactly the same. It's still a PS1. If you add new code cells, it's going to just save as code as it ordinarily would on the PS1. If you pop open an existing PS1, it's going to be able to be shown in the same way. So because of this, it means that you won't have the same fully rich experience that you would have in a full-on notebook file. So Jupyter Notebooks provide a much richer notebook experience, since the output can leverage HTML and JavaScript runtime available in the client. And the Jupyter Notebooks experience also allows you to use other languages besides PowerShell. In this situation, since it is just a PS1, it's just going to behave exactly like a PowerShell file. So a natural progression we might understand would be to continue writing your PS1 files in your normal VS Code experience, and then convert these to notebook mode in the UI to get that more familiar, to become more familiar with the notebook experience, and then eventually move on towards the Jupyter Notebook experience once you're more familiar. But in the meantime, definitely give this a go. Like I said, PowerShell Preview extension, VS Code, and then you're going to have the setting here for the toggle button. Anything you wanted to add to this, Tyler?
Nope, that's good.
Okay, awesome. So with that, I am now taking over for Joey, taking notes. So let me just 1 second pull that up. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and do it like that, and then we'll fix that later. My GitHub seems to not quite be working how I expected it to, but notebook mode, alrighty. And so then I believe that the next item on the agenda today was PowerShell DSC changes and what's going on with those. So Steve, do you want to comment a bit on that?
Sure. So let me say a few things before going into some of the details. So I did open up an issue to kind of explain what we're doing, and I'm going to get into that in a bit. But before we talk about that, one thing I didn't necessarily announce that maybe I can mention here is that one big change that happened with DSC is that my team owns DSC now. So that means that basically I have more control over what we're going to be doing about it. And one of the big changes I want to do early on, and this is also to support Linux because we have some technical challenges there, is to move away from Moth towards using JSON as the intermediate schema format, with plans to eventually move the config file from Moth to also JSON, but that's not necessary at this point in time. So we've already put some resources towards this. So we also are, that meaning my team has taken over the PS desired state configuration module, which actually houses a large portion of the functionality, with the other portion being in the PowerShell engine in SMA DLL. So we're making changes in both places to enable this scenario. The main thing I want to set expectations for is that this feature will stay experimental for 7.1. So if you want to continue to play with it, which we do ask you to do, so you can give us that feedback, you have to enable that experimental feature once we get to the release candidate. We'll probably, well, I like to target getting this out of experimental in 7.2, which means also kind of finishing the Moth to JSON work. And so, you know, really the big change here is that we're not dependent on the local configuration manager, which was largely like a Windows only thing. What we're trying to enable is an ecosystem where people can build DC resources using PowerShell script. So we support both PowerShell classes, which is our recommendation, or you can also use pure PowerShell script, meaning that you expose test set and get functions, test functions that we can call into. Which also means that instead of an LCM, you would actually just write a PowerShell script that serves the same purpose. So you do your own logging, you call get DC resource, you call invoke DC resource, and do all that yourself. This also means that it's going to be easier to integrate with existing configuration tools like Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Salt, things like that. So hopefully we can actually use this as a way to kind of restart the ecosystem to get more broad usage of DSC beyond what we have for Windows. So again, this is more of a marathon, not a sprint. It will take some time for us to kind of get everything that we need, but we are starting on this process in 7.1 timeframe. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add for that. Feel free to post questions. Otherwise, maybe I can also take a look to see if there's any questions on the RFC repo side. All right. So I'm just going to scroll through any questions posted on the issue on GitHub first. So the first one is Pester upgrade perspective, and I don't know. I don't think Yakov is here, but I assume this is regarding whether or not we're going to upgrade our tests from 4 to version 5. So I think that the desire is to eventually move all of the tests across all of our repos to 5, but it's going to take time because it's a big breaking change. and we probably won't do any of that until after we GA the whatever repo it is, whether it's PowerShell Get or whether it's PowerShell 7 or whatever the case may be. But I think there's a lot of benefits to the new version 5, especially with some of the integration with VS Code. But it's going to happen over time. But it is probably going to be a direction we'll head. Let me see, next question. Okay, so that was not a question. That's, can you add a Outlook account? Let's see, we answered Elia's question, I believe. PowerShell Core talks about adding the option to capture the what if output, like it was done with the right host stream back in PS 5.1. So this looks like a specific issue request, a feature request. I don't think we've talked about this one, so I'll have to take a look at that separately. And this is issue number 9870. So hopefully people in the community can just also provide feedback whether they think that's a good idea or not, or whether it would be useful. Let's see, PowerShell VS Code extension was being worked on right now in terms of bug stability performance. Is Rob on here?
Hi.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So there's a big work item currently that I think I don't know how to pronounce her username, but ILI 101 identified is the revamp pipeline thread handling issue, which I've been using to track this work. But essentially, the way PowerShell is hosted today by the PowerShell extension is sort of suboptimal, and so some of the things like the run space state becoming corrupted, and just some of the other instabilities and idiosyncrasies of the extension are caused by that, because there's a fundamental difference in how PowerShell needs to see the world, which is like everything one at a time, totally synchronous, and in how a text editor experience sees the world, which is protocol oriented, very asynchronous. And so I've been embarking on the work to basically totally redo the way PowerShell is hosted by the extension, which is a large work item because it means that we have to sort of go back to the drawing board on the PowerShell host that sits at the core of things. And so you could probably, I've tried to be pretty transparent in that issue about where I've been or how far I've gotten. I've been juggling a couple of other work items recently, so I'm just getting back to it now. But basically, it has to support things like nested PowerShell sessions, remoting, all the different kinds of remoting, like enter host PS host process or debug run space, stuff like that. So there's a sort of a long tail of things, and there's also all of the clever remote integrations that the PowerShell extension does that have to be that we have to sort of like go and make sure still all work properly and things like that, like PS edit over the remoting pipe. So I'm hoping to get that out in a preview of the PowerShell extension. I don't know, within, well, there are some other things on the agenda for September, but probably November. But as I say, it's it'll be out in the preview extension first, just because it's a fairly large thing, and we're going to want to make sure that it's gets some use by preview users first to make sure that we've ironed any little bugs out. But honestly, using it so far, it's made life much nicer, both from an internal perspective in the sense that we have a much more stable set of internal APIs to depend on, but also it makes, I personally think that things like completions are faster, that things don't seem to grind to a halt. It's also just easier to sort of debug and reason about what's going on. So even if there are issues, they're going to be a lot easier to pick through than what we've had, until today, where sort of things happen and we sort of say, oh, well, we're not really sure what's going on because it's so complicated. This is a lot less complicated.
All right, thanks, Rob. I'll let Sydney catch up a little bit here. Are you ready? So then there was a bunch of topics that the PowerShell team added, so I'm going to skip all those because we already covered all of those. The next one I see is a request to have YAML as a first-class citizen in PowerShell, and this comes up, you know, on and off because we already support JSON and XML as first-class citizens. So currently, there's no plan to do this. There's different reasons. Like one of them is YAML, despite being more human readable, is actually less machine readable. So there are differences in some implementations, but also, you know, the direction we're trying to head with PowerShell in the long term is really to not have like everything in the world in PowerShell. It's kind of like we should really have a ecosystem that's very comfortable with just installing what they need off of the gallery. You know, and some of the things we're looking at, again, a few releases from now, might be that we want to pull out like some of the modules the big modules that we ship in PowerShell, like management utility, things like that. And maybe some of those should be split up even further, like the web commandlets and JSON commands could be independent. That way they can be on their own time scale and don't need to be updated only with the next PowerShell release. And also means that you could be on a older or newer version of the PowerShell engine with a different version of those modules. So those are certain things we want to do. So in that direction, we don't necessarily want to pull a lot more stuff into PowerShell right now, unless it turns out that it's something that people use like a large population use all the time. Keep in mind that when we get to this future world where we have a smaller PowerShell that you pull in stuff, we would also have this concept of a meta module where you can say, you know, install PS resource, let's call it Microsoft PowerShell DevOps or something like that, and you could get everything in the kitchen sink back. You know, so we'll make it easy to get back to a large install if that's what people need. But that's we would have that as a separate discussion in the future. Let's see, Semver. Yes, so we've been working very closely with the .NET team. Semver is not going to make it into .NET 5. So that means that we're still on a hold for what we're going to do in PowerShell. Well, the plan is we're going to adopt .NET's Semver type. We have our own implementation today, and we don't want that to be the standard. So we're probably not going to get that until maybe .NET 6 if it shows up there. So we'll have to keep waiting. Joe Sal asked about his cleanup PR. I'll be honest, I really want to see this in 7.1. I don't know if it's going to happen. If it even shows up in 7.1 though, it's just a set expectation. It will be experimental, and it probably will stay experimental in 7.1, meaning that I don't think we'll get enough time to bake it to be comfortable taking out experimental. We'll have to see if we can get some folks as they finish up their own work to kind of review that PR again. If not, it'll be in 7.2, I guess. And then some maximum, just an FYI, progress bar not showing. All right, looks like it's just an issue that may just need to be looked at. I'm not sure. All right, so that covers all of the current topics and questions on the issue. Let me just take a look in our Q&A here. Some questions on semantic highlighting that Tyler already answered. Notebook, Tyler answered. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I don't see anything else. I don't know if anyone else on the team or in the community have anything they want to ask or talk about. Otherwise, we could have a short one or shorter. I guess I'll just maybe mention secret management real quick. We expect to have a new preview next week, assuming all things go well. This will be actually a pretty big change. We got a lot of feedback from both the community and also through internal review. So we made some pretty substantial design changes. We'll have blog posts about the actual technical side and also the use case side, all hopefully next week. And then we expect to still stay in a preview state, hopefully get some more feedback as we head towards hopefully a 1.0 release this year.
I guess I can also just provide a quick update on the PowerShell Get 3.0 project. It's following somewhat similar timeline in some ways to secret management, in that we are hoping to have another preview version available next week. Our original goal, to be totally transparent, was to have this preview available in the PowerShell 7.1 Preview 6 release, but we decided to prioritize getting the testing right rather than meeting that deadline. So at this point, our goal is to have PowerShell Get 3.0 latest preview version, which may look like an RC or it may look like a preview 9 or 10, available in the PowerShell 7.1 preview 7 release, along with a compatibility module that will allow sort of conversion from your PowerShell 2.x syntax to 3.0 implementation. So that's our timeline at this point. Our goal at this point is to have PowerShell 3.0 GA in time for it to land in a 7.1 release. But as I've mentioned before, and will continue to say, this is highly dependent on us feeling like we meet a high enough quality bar, both in terms of the PowerShell Get module and in terms of the compatibility layer. So we will be heavily relying on your feedback based on the next release, which will hopefully have both of those modules in a close to GA state in them.
Yeah, let me just add, because I want to really emphasize the compatibility part. Like, we're very concerned because PowerShell Get v3 gave us an opportunity to kind of really address a lot of the big customer feedback, which required a bunch of breaking changes. And a compatibility module basically is a set of proxy functions that have the same syntax as v2, but uses v3 underneath. And we really need to get some feedback there, whether or not that is sufficient. So that you could actually move to a v3 only world with a compat module, so that your existing scripts that expect v2 will continue to work, with hopefully everyone just moving towards v3 only syntax in the future. So that will help us kind of decide whether or not it's really ready to be a not a 1.0, a 3.0 in this case.
Awesome. I'm not seeing the Q&A, but did any more questions come up in there?
It wasn't a question, it's more of a request. It'd be nice if Clean Manager XE could be successfully controlled via PowerShell. So I don't use this executable myself. I think if there isn't an issue open already, if you can open an issue, give me a specific example where it doesn't work under PowerShell, then we could look to see if we can address that. Otherwise, I mean, like, if I assume it's something to do with how arguments are being passed to a native executable, if that's the problem, then that is something we're still working at improving, and there's some discussion / controversy on how that may or may not break backwards compatibility. So it's a very difficult problem to solve. All right, I don't see anything new, so maybe we can call it a day. Let me just pop over to the RC repo real quick to see anything came in late.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any new comments in the RFC issue.
Yeah, and then nothing new on the Q&A. So, oh, looks like Ralph printed up. But anyways, maybe with that we can say everyone gets 10 minutes back.
All right, sounds good. We'll see everyone next month.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Signing off.